Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida, in the Xtreme Studios. I have with me also from Central Florida, the young 20-something Professor Pixel. And tonight, we're continuing on Xtreme TV, our season one review of the original Mission Impossible TV show. We're going to talk about episodes 15 and 16. And you know something, Pixel, we talked about this being kind of a show that used the Cold War back in the 60s as a backdrop for stuff. So you have lots of thuggery going on. You have lots of all sorts of stuff that we don't really get into too deep on this show, generally speaking, politically speaking. But tonight we've got Nazis and commies back to back. Hey, we have treasure hunting gold stuff going on, which is kind of cool. I actually think episode 15 is pretty intense. I actually kind of liked it. I'm not crazy about the ending, but I'll explain why when we get to it. But I don't know what the first TV shows or movies that came out where they were hunting for Nazi gold. And as I mentioned before, you know, you being young 20 something, the 80s Cold War stuff's beyond you and everything too. And despite the fact you've seen 1,227 episodes of the original Dark Shadows that we've covered here on the Xtreme Movie Show, one thing they did not tackle was communism and the Cold War and nuclear weapons and all sorts of stuff. But this episode I thought was pretty cool, and the ending almost, wait for it, kind of reminded you of Raiders of the Lost Ark, didn't it? What did you think about this episode?
Quick initial thoughts. I definitely enjoyed episode 15. I expected it almost, and I don't know why, maybe because I was half asleep when I got home, but when I watched this episode, I thought this was going to be a mission to get money that was already collected, but was being taken back to Germany. So it was going to take place on a plane, and then there was no plane. But no, it's basically three Nazis and a secret not Nazi have to find the gold. Roland Hand, he is the master of slipping into a role at this point, and he does it twice here. For this one, he goes ahead, takes a position of some guy they're able to just knock aside. Just go ahead. Okay. You have all this information. They barely know anything. That's one of the key things at the beginning, because it's one of the shortest messages. Your mission, if you choose to accept it. He might as well have just said that, because they didn't have any idea, because it's a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, well, you're going to be involved with these three people, and good luck. Bye. But the way that Roland is able to go ahead and get some basic information from the group, get an idea of everything, and kind of discover it with them, and then at the last minute duck away so that way they can get the advantage. I like that race. I know you're not a big fan of the ticking time clock, but I felt a little bit of that here, and I thought it turned out really well.
Yeah, I thought the setup was pretty straightforward. You've got a couple young Nazis that were sons of key figures. I'm trying to get too specific here, just, you know, for the algo and all that. And so the idea is that there's, at that time back in the 60s, was be a metric fuck ton, to use appropriate language in today's money. But even back then, it was about 300 million, I think is the number that was bounced around, in gold, because of course Hitler basically took a lot of gold, melted it all down, and the world was, had changed from a silver standard to a gold standard, and we were still on a gold standard up to this point. And then you had Bretton Woods and all this stuff, whatever. So the whole gold thing is a big deal. And I thought it was interesting because they talk about being in Argentina, which of course back then is still kind of Wild West, and even to this day you could argue is. And so a lot of Nazis, if they weren't hired by the American government, brought over to go into universities and everything else, communism might have withered on the vine a little bit. But it's kind of semi-based in reality here with what really happened. The boys from Brazil, people going over to Rio and all of that. It was something that doesn't really get talked about today in your generation. And what I thought was neat was when Roland gets to go meet these people, it seemed a little more serious, I guess, than some of the other stuff we did. Not that some arbitrary arms dealer and some no-name country that they've got to get weapons for because it could cause an imbalance of whatever. Yeah, okay, that's fine, I guess. But this just felt more realistic because of what it was grounded in. And what I really, really liked here, I think this is probably one of the strongest opening acts, I think, as far as any of the episodes we've seen, because of the way that they say, hey, you know, you got to get a hold of this one guy. And you're right when you said that Roland's basically got to figure it out on his own. So they make like their Swiss security. They get the guy in a room, they take his possessions, they look through it, and there's the occult stuff, the astrology symbols on the back of something, and they decode it right there. And I'm geeking out. I'm thinking this is cool as shit, but it still felt serious. And then when Roland walked up to meet the three guys, because it was that day at noon, and there's a circle with a piece of chalk in it with like X marks the spot, right? But he draws the Nazi symbol on there. I'm like, yeah, I'm just trying to imagine how this would have played on the American audience back in the 60s, seeing that, because seeing that for even to this day draws a lot of intense emotion about it or whatever. And I thought Roland did a real great job of not being a complete goof in here and all that. So I don't know, maybe it's just me and me being in my middle age that I'm putting a little bit more of the historical context to it than say you are, seeing as how this whole show is a first watch for us, right? And that's kind of why we're taking a look at it, because it's a show we're pretty interested in. And I just thought it was pretty solid all the way around. It was a step above because of all that. To me, the thugs were thuggish. I love how everybody, I've said this before, most of the work's done here in suits. I don't know why I popped for that, but it was just one of those things that reminded you back in the 60s. No, World War II may be over, but the war against communism isn't. And so they don't shy away from just making it seem like there's a lackey on a boat running drugs or guns or whatever like that. This is the real deal. This is the Fourth Reich that they're trying to do with this money because they need resources. I thought it was pretty good. The third act was just the weakest of the three to me, but I still enjoyed it. And they had some spy stuff in here when they're not just the decoding, but when they're looking at some of the prints on a screen with some of the people and everything too. It's hard to separate because a lot of these episodes kind of run together, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, especially with the second one, I wasn't disappointed because I think the second one is actually really good too. Roland is in a standout job in both episodes, but they have they have a feeling that is very similar, even though they're one's a quest and one's an extraction mission. Though, actually, going ahead and I'll talk about. Well, we can bounce around. So going into the next episode, the key thing about getting the scientist out was his wife. His wife went ahead, fled to America, and she said to the American government, "Hey, he's supposed to be following me, but I'm afraid they're keeping him." And so this mission is set up. They go ahead over there, and they find out he was never going to flee to America.
He's like, "What are you talking about? I don't want to go.
I love my country. Come on." It's a little bit of communism between friends. So yeah, that was a good twist. Like halfway through, the way that she's kind of afraid now that they have this information, and she's worried they're just going to turn her over and call it. But these are our heroes. Even if they get their hands dirty sometimes, they're still going to do the right thing. But Roland has to set up a scenario to basically get this guy to hate his own government. Hey, communism's bad. I'm going to show you why by making your life hell for the next couple days. You'll thank me. But no, when the guy goes, he's thrown in prison and he sees all of his professor friends that have just been disappearing. Why? Because, well, commies, they don't like this information that you're trying to share. Even when Roland was being introduced to the Institute, we're not usually for this kind of exchange of information, but maybe this could be beneficial to us both. And then Rollin is able to charm the guy, but he slips up by not being able to have the same signature.
Yeah, and so like with the Nazi episode, the treasure hunting one, the ending of it, just real briefly to kind of mention it, it's they basically end up in a cemetery, and they're looking through some things, and there's like this little shootout, which I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. But then they find out at the end that like a chunk of a crypt kind of falls off, and you see a gold plate there, and so it's not like, oh, the 300 million or whatever is in the crypt. It's the crypt is the 300 million, because I'm like, who the hell would make a crypt out of all that? But whatever, it was kind of cool in a way because it was a little different. But one of the Nazis guys had gotten away, but then it just ends. It's like, wait a minute, you didn't shoot the guy in his back when he's running away, you didn't kill a commie who's getting out of there. Why not? I mean, these are guys that are sons of the prominent people, and so I thought they kind of let that be a little flat. And so in this next episode here that you're talking about, where Rollins trying to find out what's going on with this professor, the way it tips the political balance, which is why the IMF gets called in, is that he's got this ability to kind of basically streamline the ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missiles situation. And again, at the 60s, that was a big race, is a big deal. And so I agree with you. I think it was funny when the wife's like, the girl's like, he was going to make it to the river, but he didn't make it for a few days, so that means he never even tried, or something, what happened. And then you find out, to your point, what's the comment he makes? Something like, I think of simpler and better times with, good brandy and good books to pass my time, something like that. And I thought, yeah, okay, why do you hate your wife so much? Because she's kind of cute. But then what I thought was kind of outstanding, a little silly here, there is Roland throws the house party to get everybody together, and he does it, and he's got the accent, and he charms the one really cute blonde lady, and basically doesn't even know her name, Sylvia or whatever it turned out to be. And he's like, no, I'm going to throw a party, and I want you to bring your friends. And then he goes up to the bar, and it's like, I want you to get vodka, I want this and that, whatever. And it's like, he's playing like a German scientist, but he's doing it the American kind of way, where he's got some balls on him. And it's like, I just feel like the show, even though he's billed as a special guest star, and he did that for certain contractual reasons rather than a recurring character, but like, he is like the MVP of it, because it's like, he just does this so damn well, and you're like, okay, everybody else just should be supporting you. I feel like I'm watching MacGyver rather than a team. And it's not a bad episode, I agree with you, but after the last one being kind of tight, this one, I kind of liked it being loose too, but I kind of didn't like the professor. I just, the whole, everybody talking like this, like they're communist or Russian. It's like, I'm tired already in this show. It's like, my goodness, it's just, I don't know. It just kind of was flat for me. I wasn't crazy about it. I mean, I like Roland like pimping out and everything. That's kind of funny, and I thought they could have done something more there. But again, you get a little bit of a shootout at the end, and it's like, okay, 2 for 2, 0 for 2 on shootouts. Third act, not crazy about that.
Yeah. So it seems crazy to keep saying this every week, and still, because at this point in The Prisoner, we were very pissed off. We were very upset. And because it's a show that has the same quality, but it never goes anywhere. This does the same thing, but it's keeping us entertained each and every week because of these slight, we have this situation going on this week.
Right.
They're different missions. It doesn't feel like it has to be a linear story, which The Prisoner oftentimes felt like it should have been. Like, that's what it needed.
And originally it was planned for that way, except for the filler jazzy fistfight episodes, which kind of, brings it down.
So, yeah, but this show is consistently entertaining. It is genuinely good, and there are some episodes that have been really spectacular. They are solid. The concepts always they scratch that good itch in the back of your brain, like hunting for Nazi gold.
Yeah,
with the
I'm
Nazis.
gonna watch it just because they're doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you say that's the plot. Okay, I'm in. I'm hooked. You watch these three guys go ahead and make their symbol, and then him finish off the swastika. You're like, I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
You know, it doesn't have to go anywhere. I mean, it can and like a lot of these episodes we can see, we could this could have been the very first or second episode, really. I mean, there's no real way of kind of to this point making it seem like it has to be that way. No meta arc or anything. I do like how yeah, we're of course we're conditioned to the point here, right, where we're going to go, okay, how's he going to get the setup, all right? And it doesn't have to be better and better every single episode. It just can be different. He's gone to like a construction site a couple times. I think we kind of like the bookstore going behind the stuff. That's kind of cool. In one of these episodes, to your point, you know, the mission thing was so simple. Where like Day says, and please dispose of this in your typical fashion. I'm like that sounded a little different. Like I don't know, maybe we're just being lazy or whatever. And he drives by the giant furnace and he just throws it in there. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I like seeing the new different things, even if it's just whatever the setup is for the plot to tell us. That's cool. And then it's like, okay, who's he gonna pick? I like him sitting there in his swing singler's bachelor pad, thumbing through the same 4 or 5 pictures and maybe pulling out 2 or 3 because that's kind of what it's been for the past month or so. It is kind of cool, but then at some point it's got to start, and we have not had a good heavy in a while. It's which is disappointing. We just get a generic Caucasian dude with a maybe with a mustache or a non-smiling look on his face, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. We've got a team that we're used to, but all the bad guys or situations are just, you know, not engaging. I think the stuff that's been more engaging with them is how they're interacting with people that are not necessarily the key antagonists, right? So like when Roland a couple episodes ago, when they're like when he's posing as like the boat guy, and Cinnamon's somebody who's posing as somebody else, and he's making like he's wooing her and they're tourists or whatever like that, falling in love, and they're interacting with the different people that are close by, the common folk, you know, morons. That can be pretty interesting too. It's, you know, it's not like James Bond where you go, man, if the villain sucks, then the movie kind of sucks too a little bit. It's tough, and I'm having a tough time with going, okay, how much more can it carry? Because we've done 16 episodes now. We're halfway more than in this first season. Like I said, I hope it doesn't run out of steam. It's been good so far, but you can definitely tell they're recycling a lot of the background film footage and some of the locations. And I get it. It's, you know, Saturday night TV, just kind of get you through it. But it's better when they do more drama, thriller, spy stuff to me, rather than action with like the shootouts at the end, or, you know, what is it, about every fourth episode now? It's a dark car in the middle of the night that they throw somebody in, or somebody gets in and it drives away, and then you roll the credits. I'm all for ending fast, right? But it's just I'm going, okay, how many more of these combinations can I take before it might get tiring? And I know we're going to have some lineup changes after the season, so maybe that might do it, and they could probably tweak it. So it hasn't regressed. So I'll agree with you. It's kind of stayed at that same level.
Which you gotta appreciate. I mean, that something is able to stay so consistent.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of different people writing and everything, and directing the individual episodes, so they're not necessarily going to like feel the same, if that makes sense. It's not like the, you know, these 8, 10, 12 episode things we get now on Netflix and other subscription services that will do that, where you can kind of feel it going, where people now feel, go, well, if I'm not world building or putting something to it, why even bother? But yeah, overall, I was impressed, I think, by the episode 15 to me, out of, I think it's 26 or 20 episodes we're going to have. So about the halfway mark, I'm like, man, I hope we get a couple more really solid ones like this that seem a bit more serious. I like that. So episode 15 was the legacy. That's the Adolf Hitler and the Nazi gold, and the reluctant dragon, which is a great title, by the way, is this, you know, scientist behind Iron Curtain kind of nerd guy. I don't know, not too bad, not too bad. I'm trying to find something unique to say about it each episode, because it almost sounds like I feel like, well, the episodes are very similar, and I don't necessarily want our reviews to always be the same. So we'll see what happens here with the next couple of episodes too. We'll see if Cinnamon and everybody else kind of gets back into it, or what happens there too. But we'll see what happens next week. Other thoughts or observations for these final two?
Don't build your crypts out of Nazi gold.
That's true.
That's it.
If you're going to not follow your wife and all that, well, you've got a template for how to do it. Just stay where you're at while you send her home. I mean, I was like, that was kind of like assholey, but I'm like, I mean, I'm not saying he was right, but you're right. It was kind of a nice little thing to it. So I don't know. I guess we're due for a ticking time bomb episode. Huh? What do you think?
Oh yeah. Like, let's deal with a real bomb. Like, let's go have a full episode just them dealing in a room with a bomb. Oh my gosh. And that reminds me, like, sorry, I'm gonna go on a ramble here. That first episode where they have to get into the vault and they have the way they shot that with the green light inside of the vault, that one guy with the glasses, can't remember his name, the guest star, and him just figuring out his way of getting through there. That shot, we haven't had a shot really like that in these past few episodes. That was one of the best things about it. But it's definitely taken that first episode and it's improved upon itself to the formula that they have now.
Now, I can't say too much about, knowing a lot of how the film schedule was. I kind of always felt like when, if you're having 22 to 26 episodes a season, basically you might have a couple months off during the year, but generally, and you might sketch out some stuff, but basically you're filming an episode a week and then you're trying to get it edited. That includes editing, all that kind of stuff, and getting it so it's in the can. And so here, again, some of the episodes we haven't, like Cinnamon wasn't in this last episode, right? Or Willie. So kind of whatever's going on there, they could play this at any time because there's no particular theme to it. You could play them out of order. It's not conducive to the overall story. So that gives them a lot of options as far as, hey, we might have one in the bag, but we're, these people are sick, so we'll just make an episode out of this. Okay, let's change it. So sometimes these do get slapped together, but again, it's not a bad thing. But when you think about it, wow, how many shows now that get released other than ones that have a template, whether it's like CSI or some of these other ones, are they doing 22 to 26 episodes for 1 year? They don't. They'll do 8 to 10 or whatever, and then they'll have a break for a couple months, and they'll call it season 2, and then they'll play it in the spring, or if they have 14 episodes, they'll play 7 and 7. That's just how it goes. And whether it's right or it's wrong, it's like I do give them credit for going, hey, what are we going to do this year? Okay, last week was Nazis. Okay, so this week, well, we did a professor thing on the college. Okay, let's do a bomb thing. Well, no, we did that. Okay, so what's next? Let's have, I don't know, some FBI type thing here, like counterfeiting. That's the kind of that I feel like when they're in the idea room sketching these things out, that's what they're doing. And that's not bad. But for 26 episodes, I think the season is, that's, it has to be fairly consistent, and it has to be, not everything's going to be, grade A, but not everything's going to flop. But yeah, episode 15 was very, very strong. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 1, episodes 15 and 16 of the original Mission Impossible, 1966-67 year, without Peter Graves from the University of Minnesota. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside here with me, of course, is Professor Pixel. I'd like to thank you guys for watching and listening. We always have a quiet amount of people watching and listening to this. It's kind of cool. It's very consistent. That's what our numbers are, and I like that. So, this mission, should we choose to accept it, would be to continue over the next month or two, finishing off season 1 here. It's definitely has some legs. It's definitely there. It's a nice dividend aristocrat, let's say, with a solid 7 to 10% return yearly. Okay, with some slight upside to it. It's the nice steady girlfriend that's reliable. It's not the hottie or the weirdo. I think that suffices. Wouldn't you agree, sir?
Works just fine.
All right, good night, everybody. Stay extreme.
This was not a Dan Curtis production.
Nor a Quinn Martin production.
But it's